Hello everyone and welcome back to UE5 BP Guru. Today we're going to be finally taking a look at our encounter BP. Oh god, a little bit laggy there. So what we need to do is we need to set up a little bit of information before we can actually start to take a look at all of the actual code. So we're going to create a new folder for this, and we're going to call this encounter info. We'll call it encounter info, it's fine. And we're going to create a few things within that. We're going to create a blueprint. We're going to call this, it's going to be an actor. We'll call this encounter BP. We also need to create a couple of structs. The first one is going to be F encounter struct. We're going to create another one called F possible encounters, and we're going to create a data table from our encounter struct. But let's actually set these structs up first. So we need three variables. We need the Pokemon name. We need the minimum level and the maximum level. And we'll set these to names and both of these to integers, and we can save that. We also want the probability. So the possible encounters is kind of the probability. So all we need this to be is a Pokemon name, and we can make this a map with a float. And so to explain how this works, our possible encounters is a list of things that will potentially appear. So for example, Route 1 has a 50% chance of spawning a Pidgey and a 50% chance of spawning a Rattata. And this possible encounters will work it out to pull out a random name. The encounter struct is what we want those levels to be on that route. So once we've pulled this name out, eventually it'll get put into this encounter struct, and the encounter struct will work out what level that creature is when it appears. That's kind of the gist of it. And the data table we need to make, if we right click, go to miscellaneous, create a data table, and we'll call it from the F encounter struct. We will click OK. Now we want to make one of these for every route we can possibly find. So Route 1 encounter data table. If we open this up now, because we're testing this and we haven't got the other models for Route 1, we're going to create it from the Pokemon we have at our disposal. So we're going to make them from our starters. Charmander and Charmander, and they'll all be the same just for the testing purposes. And Squirtle, again, put it in here, and it's going to be between 3 and 5 again. Save that and close that. And if you want to create Route 2, you would just literally duplicate this, call it Route 2, and create the information within that. Once we've done that, we can now start to work on the actual BP itself. The only thing we need to add to the viewport is a collision box, and we can change the size of it. It doesn't really make much difference, to be honest. We'll be changing it when we're in the actual scene anyway. And you would overlay this wherever there is some grass, is the idea. Off of that, the only thing we need to do is go down and grab our on component begin overlap, and our on end overlap, like so. We won't be setting all of this up in one episode. It's probably gonna take 2 or 3, so just bear that in mind. So we're gonna cast to third person character, like so, on both of these, and we're gonna get owner of this third person character. Pick the top one for actor, and we're gonna say is valid. Now the reason we're doing that is because there's potentially going to be multiple players in an area, and we don't want to trigger this for every player that enters that box or trigger it for someone random. We want to make sure we are triggering that for the correct person. So we're going to make sure it is a valid option. It is the actual owner. And by doing that, we're checking it is the owner we're setting this up for. We're not going to set this up for anyone else by accident. Hence that get owner. And then we're going to set the owner's information and change it to third person character reference, so we know it's the correct person. And what we want to do is, in our third person character, we go to our third person character blueprints and third person character. We want to we're going to want to set up a reference, and this is going to be encounter box reference. And the reason we're doing this is so that we know the exact box we're entering and exiting as well. Encounter BP, and we want an object reference. We can then come into here, and we can set that as the reference. So we can pull off from this actual third person character reference and set encounter box reference. And the encounter box reference is going to be a reference to self. It's going to be itself. And we should be able to compile that, and everything should look great. The next thing we want to do is set a timer by event. And the time we want is to be every second, and you also want to make sure it's ticked to looping. We're going to promote this to a variable, and we're going to call this spawn timer. The reason we set this, by the way, is we also want to call this random points, just so you know. We will be calling that again. The last thing we want to do on this end overlap is we want to take this spawn timer, and we want to pause timer by handle. Oh, sorry, no, we don't. We want to clear and invalidate timer by handle. We want to basically destroy it because we don't want this to ever pause and unpause by accident by calling this reference or anything like that. So that's why we do those two things. Otherwise, the other thing you'll find is that sometimes this timer won't pause, and it will carry on running after you've left the box, and that's when you get some issues. So the next thing we want to do is we want to get a custom event, and we're going to call this roll for encounter. Roll encounter. And we're going to plug this directly into this event. And so what that means is that every second that this timer by event runs, it will run this. So every second this event will run until we either pause the timer or destroy the timer like we are doing here. The next thing we want to do is we're going to do a branch check. And this branch check is going to check to see if we are moving. So what we can do is we can get our third person character reference. We can get character movement, which is down here. Get this character movement. We want to get velocity, which is this bottom yellow one. And then we want to get a vector length XY. And we want to make sure that this is over or greater than 0.1. And then we can plug that in. So if we're moving faster than 0.1 or our velocity is faster than 0.1, we can roll this encounter. If we're not, even though this is still running every second while we're in the box, it won't initiate a roll check until we're moving it within that box. Then we want to do one last branch check. I say one last, it's probably going to be another one. And we're going to do, so you've probably seen this from the old series. We're going to make a new variable called times roll failed. And we'll make that an integer. We are going to drag that out and do a get. And we're going to multiply. We're going to change this bottom pin by right-clicking and changing it to a float, single precision. And we're going to 0.05. So timesing it by 0.05. We're going to make a literal float. Make literal float. And we'll set that to 0.1. And then we're going to add those two figures together. Once they're added together, we're going to get a random bool with weight. And then we're going to plug that into this branch. Just like so. And that'll check to see if we land within that random weight. If we do, we've completed the roll. If we haven't, we've failed. So if we fail, we need to take this and times. No, we don't. We want to increment int. And that will basically set that from 0 to 1 to 1 to 2 to 2 to 3. And then we times that by 0.05, and we should get eventually a positive check. If we do get a positive check and we can encounter a Pokemon, we can set our times roll fail back to 0, ready for the next time. And we're going to get our spawn timer. And we're going to pause timer by handle. Like so. And then we're going to create a new function, a new custom event, should say, and we'll call this set the encounter. So this is just rolling for it, and the next one is going to actually set encounter, and we're going to test this before we move on. So it's good to test your code whenever you can, and we'll just say, okay, print string encounter found, and then we'll do a delay of 1 second, and then we'll unpause that timer so that we can check that it keeps working, like so. And then we're going to compile. We're going to press play. Oh, no, we're not. Sorry. We're not going to press play because I don't actually have a BP in the world. So encounter info. I'm going to put it around here. Bring it up here. Oh gosh, I'm messing this up now. Oh dear. Do that. That looks good to me anyway. So we should be able to walk into that and interact, and you'll see, hopefully, an encounter up here. So if we just start walking around in here, encounter found, it should unpause the timer a second later. And if we keep walking around, another encounter is found, and another encounter is found. So all of these would technically, the game would stop and we would find a Pokemon. So we can come back into here now and close this one down and shut this off. There we go. And so what you'd imagine is when we end the fight, we would take our encounter box reference and unpause that handle so that we can find another Pokemon. That's kind of how it's going to work. Also, I forgot to mention this earlier. Obviously, we can pick up our Pokemon, but I haven't actually shown you working in multiplayer, because I'm sure some of you are probably wondering. So let's just double check that it is. So if we play as a client, oh, I didn't mean to do it that way. Set it to 2, so that we get 2 of these, and I'm going to try and show you all this working together. So if we grab, oh, there's 2 of us in there. if I go and grab one with this one, I'm going to go and grab Bulbasaur. Yes, and I'm going to call him Dave. Dave the Bulbasaur. Dave's been added to his team. If I check this, it's H, isn't it? You can see that client 2 has Dave. Now, if I go to this one and I pick up this one, Charmander, I'll give him the nickname Dave. I'll give him the name Sarah. Why not? Sarah the Charmander. Sarah's been added to this one's team, and you can see that I have Sarah. As client 1, I have Sarah. As client 2, I have Dave. And it does show that up for both of them. So the server knows that client 2 has Dave, and client 1 has Sarah. So this is working. And as you can see on their separate screens, it shows the Pokemon that they've taken. We want that to happen. We don't want the game to update that Pokemon is taken for both of them, because they need to make their own choices. So that's actually a good thing that that's happened. So, for example, Dave and Sarah are two separate Pokemon. And as you can see, I can come up here and do that. So it is working. We want that to happen, because if both players wanted Bulbasaur and one of them took Bulbasaur, there'd be no other Bulbasaur. So it's imperative that happens on their own client side. We don't want that to happen server side. Otherwise, you're going to get like thousands of players who can't pick up a Pokemon because they're all taken, and then what do they do, right? So that's a good thing that that's happened. And they can both go and already independently find encounters. So for example, if I go over to here, you'll see that client 1 or client 2, whichever one this one is, I think this is client 2, it should ping up that says client 2 has encountered a Pokemon in a moment. Fingers crossed, if it works. Come on. Did I not collide with the box for some reason? Let's try again. Oh, it's because I deleted it. I delete the code, so it doesn't matter. I'm never going to be able to show you that. What am I doing? So yeah, so you can see that the starters are working already on multiplayer side. The encounters I promise you, they already are working. It's just I deleted that code. I forgot. And yeah, so we should now be able to encounter a Pokemon, technically encounter one. It's now about finding which Pokemon we're going to encounter and then having them appear in their battle world. Now, we need to set up the battle world at some point as well. So that's also something that needs to be done down the line before we can ever get this properly working. But we can simulate it and do checks. And I will always advise you do your checks while you work. Don't do the whole code and then expect for it to work, and it doesn't work because you haven't checked anything. So make sure as you go along you check your work. It's very important. So the one thing that's going to be different with this as well is we're actually going to set up the encounters as an enemy team, which is how it's going to be for all of our NPCs and for our wild Pokemon. They're all going to be put onto a sort of, I'm doing air quotations that you can't see, but a team. They're going to be on a team, right? So we're going to set this up like we would anything else. And we're going to use the Pokemon party info. And we're then going to set this to if we click on it, we're going to set it to an array to begin with. And in all honesty, we can leave this array empty for the wild Pokemon. We don't need it to have any entries. It can just be empty because we'll just add the one to the array. So that's that one. And the first thing we're going to do, and it's very important you do this, is we are going to clear it. Because every time we do this, we're going to add a Pokemon to that team. And if we don't clear it, it's just going to keep adding more and more and more. And eventually, if you did like 20, you're going to face 20 Pokemon in one fight, which we don't really want to have happen. So you must clear your enemy team. The next bit is going to be very similar to what we've done before. And we're going to get a random integer in range. And again, it's going to be between 1 and 4096. And we're going to check to see if that is equal to 1. And then if that's true, we're going to put that in here. and we're going to set a new boolean called is shiny, and I'm going to try and group these up a little bit so it's nice and neat, because that's something I didn't do in the last episode. Nothing was neat, and it was just a complete and utter shambles trying to find anything. So it's really important that you group up your variables so that they are neat. So if it's equal to 1, we're gonna say it is shiny, and if it's not shiny. We're then going to do the gender. So again, get a branch, and we're going to say, okay, we're going to get a random integer between 0 and 100, and just like before, we're going to check if it is equal to or greater to than 51. If it's true, the gender will be male or female. So add a new variable, set this one to the gender that we created, and just call this gender, and we'll get 2 of these, true and false, male and female, and that should be that done. And then we need to create a new function, and this function is going to be called choose encounter. I didn't do that right. I did an event graph. I didn't mean to do that. Do a function, choose encounter, and we'll fill this in a moment, but we're going to put this here. And we need one output pin to be type name, so Pokemon name, and we'll change this to type name, and then everything else will make sense, I promise. I'm just cautious of how long this episode's taken. We're going to fill this in next episode, and then we'll carry on down the line. I will just put one last note in. It's going to be a get data table row, and we're going to basically that was the wrong one. Get data table row. That's the one I needed. We want to plug this Pokemon name into this data table row name, and we're going to get the basic Pokemon info. That's what we're basically looking to do. So with this, so for anyone who's followed the originals along, the reason we don't need the Pokemon in the world is because we're getting the raw data straight from this data table, as opposed to the models that were in the world at the beginning of the last series. So if you've caught up with the rest of the series, you'll already know this. That's why we changed it to that. But yeah, so we're going to choose the encounter name. That's going to produce our Pokemon data, and then we'll be able to use this data to fill in the gaps to make up the encounter. That's kind of how this works. So far you should have the ability to find an encounter. You should have the ability to pick its shiny and its gender, and then you should have a function set up for choosing encounter, and you should have the basic info set up into that. And everything should be working on client side. So again, if you want to test that, go to net mode, change it to client, and then change it to 2 members and test. It should work in standalone and in client play. Everything we've done so far should be working like that. So yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed this episode. Thank you so much, guys, for watching, and I will see you next time. Much love. Take care. Bye.